Hi, it's Dr. Steve from Misericordia University. For our last class meeting, let's review all of the course material. Now realize that during the course of this video, I'm going to move very quickly through this material. It's not intended to be instructional because we've already gone through all of this content. The purpose here is to simply review everything, highlight the various things that we did, and allow a chance for you to reflect on everything that we covered and see how everything relates together. We started off our course by considering various aspects of curriculum in secondary ed. In topic 1, we began our course by considering the history and the intended purposes of secondary education. We started our look at this topic in the 1600s, before this country was formally founded, and when we were just colonies. And we looked at the first public school, the first public high school. We looked at the Prussian model and Horace Mann. We looked at various laws and various changes that came about and were reflected in schools. We also looked at some of the purposes and what different people, like Ben Franklin, for example, what they felt the purpose of secondary education really was. And then we challenged you to think, what is the purpose of high school today? Is it for preparation for a job? Is it for career? Is it for life? And we held a good discussion about that. In the discussion, we analyzed some data from the United States Department of Labor. We started by looking at job zones, and we found that the more education someone gets, typically the higher the salary is of that person. Then we looked at the amount of job availability by the different zones, and we found that it reflected a bell curve. In topic 2, we looked at schools themselves. We traced the development of the junior high school and how it morphed into middle schools, and it was due to concerns about student differences. And we contrasted the different types of schools, and we looked at different common practices at different levels of schools. We then looked at how schools and teachers are evaluated and held accountable for our activities. And we looked at the Future Ready PA Index, and we analyzed school performance report cards, so to speak, and we looked at public schools. We looked at also the cyber charters, the public cyber charters online. And we also gained an introduction to the Pennsylvania Electronic Teacher Evaluation System. Topic 3 dealt with curriculum and the origins of curriculum. We started by defining, and we looked at, do we have an actual national curriculum? And we said, technically no, but kind of de facto we do because of textbooks and, of course, in the modern day, due to the various standards that we're applying, kind of have a national curriculum of sorts, although it's not a formal system. We looked at the Carnegie Unit. We looked at aspects of knowledge that all teachers are expected to teach as part of curriculum. We looked at challenges in teaching secondary ed. Then we considered topics of textbooks. We looked at setting demands and content area reading. In topic 4, we carried that discussion a little further and analysis, and we looked at the background to the standards-based education and where the standards came from. We quickly looked at some legislation that's been used within our country. We looked at the No Child Left Behind. We looked at the Pennsylvania standards and how they're actually implemented within districts. We talked about Chapter 354, which are the standards for our students in teacher education. We looked at the Common Core. We looked at the legislation called Every Child Succeeds Act. And then we considered which standards apply to you. Topic 5 dealt with teacher accountability. And to support that discussion, we looked at 3 different items. We started with the in-task standards for teacher preparation. Then we looked at the Danielson framework for teaching, because it is used by PDE as the basis for teacher evaluation in the state of Pennsylvania. And then we looked at one item that is being used currently in Pennsylvania schools called student learning objectives. We rounded out our discussion of curriculum with topic 6, where we considered how we plan lessons and units. So we looked at the elements of those pieces. We looked at goals and objectives. We looked at how to write objectives. We reviewed Gagne's 9 significant events model, and we looked at how you can practically apply that in instruction, in lesson plans, and also in units. And then we also examined the Misericordia lesson plan and unit plan formats as well, and how we use them. Then we moved into the methods of teaching section of the course. We began this portion of the course with a discussion on student characteristics. And as we looked at student characteristics, we focused on the diversity that we find in the modern classroom. And we said that in teaching diverse students, teachers need to differentiate instruction and also respect universal design for learning guidelines. Before we examined specific methods of teaching, we looked at learning and the brain. We looked at how learning physiologically works, what it involves. And then we asked the question, what can we learn from current brain research? And we looked at items such as maintaining attention of the learner. We looked at the magical number as originally proposed by Miller and as updated by some researchers today. We looked at chunking. We looked at cognitive overload. We looked at the importance of meaning and emotion and the amygdala in the brain. And then, having had those discussions, we looked at learning theories one more time and tied them together. We looked at Gardner's multiple intelligences, Bloom's taxonomy, and we also considered behaviorism versus constructivism. And then we, in topic 3, laid the final groundwork before exploring various teaching methods. We looked at the work of Burgess, who says, teach like a pirate. And that ultimately means to combine your passion for your content, your professional passions, your personal passions, and move all of that, bring it all together, and seek to create life-changing, engaging lessons that will really connect your students with you and with your content. And in the process, we said that everybody needs to become very skilled in the use of direct and also indirect methods of teaching and get more active learning taking place in your classroom. We began our examination of how we could improve traditional methods of teaching in topic 4. So we started by looking at improving lectures. We explored a bunch of alternative methods of lecturing as suggested by Duplass. We looked at different presentational hooks, such as the kinesthetic, using people as props, and real-world application to make the teaching and the learning more engaging and more meaningful to the students. Then we looked at the possible use of thinking prompts, such as video, using an article, using something that's thought-provoking in the form of a cartoon or a meme or a photograph or an artifact of some sort that would provoke conversation. It would stimulate dialogue and introduce students to some deeper thought at the beginning of a lecture. As part of lecturing, teachers involve a lot of questioning. So topic 5 dealt with questioning. We considered Marzano's 4 levels of questions. We looked at basing questions on Bloom's taxonomy. Then we looked at Knight's questioning strategies. And then we took a look at different effective questioning techniques. We looked at the important topic of wait time and indicated that American teachers typically are very impatient and do not allow enough time for students to process, reflect, and develop an answer when they pose a question to them. And we concluded this area by talking about and exploring Knight's 4-step questioning technique. When a teacher asks a question of students and a student says, "I don't know," and simply wants to evade answering the question. In topic 6, we looked at demonstration and also review. So how do students demonstrate what they know, and how can we review with them? And we looked at these apps. We looked at Kahoot, we looked at Flip Quiz Me, which is kind of like a Jeopardy type game. And we looked at various game show templates. Then we looked at low-tech or no-tech games, like Around the Room Review, and we said that anything that is a game that students know, we could adapt that for the classroom. In topic 7, we examined various student-centered methods of teaching, and we said that we could divide them into social approaches and inquiry approaches. So the social approaches, we looked at holding discussions, we looked at various forms of cooperative learning, where we're learning in small groups or in dyads. We talked about panels and debates and role-playing, simulation, and games. In terms of inquiry approaches, we looked at the subtle differences, I should say, between inquiry teaching and discovery learning and how engaging they can be for students. We looked at project-based learning and also case studies. And then we moved into topic 8, dealing with assessment of learning. We looked at these issues in assessment. We looked at subjectivity versus objectivity on the part of the teacher. We said you don't want to rely on too heavily on one form of assessment. And we talked about the halo effect, not to be confused with the Misericordia HALO, meaning that we want to focus on learners that are the high achievers, the average achievers, and so on. This was the halo effect, whereas a teacher looks at a student and kind of doesn't take a good look, but rather sees like a halo around them and thinks that they're better than what they actually are. So we have to watch that. We truly want to assess so we can properly help students. We looked at how you can adapt assessments for students with special needs or our English learners. We said when you're creating a test, you could set up a table of specifications, or in other words, a blueprint for the test. And then we looked at different alternative assessments, like authentic tests, product assessments, and performance assessments. In this topic, we also looked at exit slips. We found that Marzano suggested that there are 4 reasons that a teacher might use exit slips. And then we looked at 3 different electronic apps that a teacher could use to support assessment. We could look at Plickers, we could look at ZipGrade, and also Soapbox as 3 representative tools. In topic 9, we looked at how a teacher could infuse more technology tools into teaching and learning. And we divided that into 3 different sections. The first section was technology to support instruction. And we looked at how a teacher could make videos interactive and send them home as homework. We looked at the ability of teachers to use technology tools to create paper-based, like more traditional activities for students, like crossword puzzles and word searches and so on. We looked at Common Sense Education. This is a website that's a good source for locating content apps to support your content teaching. We looked at how a teacher could provide links for students using Symbaloo. Our second category was technology to support student assignments. and we considered 4 tools that are available on classtools.net: Fakebook, Twister, a text generator, and a timeline generator. And our third category of technology was supporting students' reading and writing in the classroom. We looked at Tween Tribune from the Smithsonian Institution. We looked at how you could simplify wording by using an online tool like Rewordify. We looked at a series of tools that are provided at forteachers.org, and these tools all support writing. We looked at the writing tools offered by readwritethink.org, and then we said you could have your students write a book at StoryJumper. In topic 10, we looked at how you could create a more active classroom. We started by examining QR codes, quick response codes, and you could use those in a variety of ways with students using their phones. And then we looked at the mystery box, the storytelling hook, the teaser hook, and also the backwards hook, ways of generating more interest at the start of your classes. Further examining how to create an active classroom, we examined a number of engaging, attention-getting class starters, ways to engage students right at the beginning of class, whether it's the beginning of a lesson or the beginning of a unit. We looked at things such as what's in the bag, snowball. We did a variation on corners, and we even finished with chance, which meant rolling a single die and letting that die offer 6 different possible teaching methods and let the dice figure how you're going to teach it. All these are engaging ways to begin your class. We rounded out our discussion of creating an active classroom by looking at one of the most recent developments in technology tools, and that is augmented reality. And we looked at these particular apps. We looked at Hologo, which we visited through a portal, other places in the world. We looked at GeoGebra, in which we rendered mathematical equation as actual shapes that can be explored by students. We had our students use a Merge Cube and a Merge Cube app called Galactic Explorer, in which they turned the Merge Cube into our solar system and they could manipulate it. We looked at BBC Civilizations based on a TV show, on a series, and we allowed our students to view museum artifacts, and then we showed the human eye in 3D through magic software. And then we looked at topic 11, which was rotational learning, and this is capitalizing on the pedagogy of centers, and they've been used in lower grades for a number of years, but they're making their way into secondary ed. So we looked at some best practice, and we found that a lot of researchers suggest creating 3 centers and doing things like an independent center, a direct instruction center where you lecture. You could do a collaborative center. You could do an innovation center where students create new things. As you can see, we covered a lot of ground throughout this semester in the areas of curriculum and methods of teaching in secondary ed. I hope you enjoyed the course, and I really enjoyed having you in class.